Hello, everybody. Today we are going to explore explicit instruction in social and emotional learning skills. To help with our discussion, I'd like to introduce my curious friend, Nikki Noggin. Nikki is an animated character shaped like a brain, with arms, legs, and an expressive face meant to represent an IEP team member. Nikki, what does your brain think of when it hears the words explicit instruction? Does it think about math, reading, or art? What about social and emotional learning skills?
Wait, what do you mean? Are you saying social and emotional learning skills are like reading and math? Do you mean I can use explicit instruction to teach social and emotional learning skills? I have no idea what those skills could be or what to teach.
Not to worry, that's precisely why we're here. An excellent starting point is the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction's Social and Emotional Learning Competencies, or SEL. These competencies encompass skills across the domain areas of social competence, emotional development, and self concept, representing vital lifelong skills that are important for everyone. When Wisconsin was developing the SEL competencies, they looked to CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. CASEL has the additional skill areas of self awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision making, and self management.
Hold on a minute. I have students that struggle with those skills, but what does it actually look like in my teaching? What would I be teaching for our students with IEPs? For those students, I need to be working on very specific skills related to their IEP goals. Well, what do I do if the student needs something more or a skill that comes before even those skills?
Then let's take an even deeper dive. Let's take a look at some skills that are more specific than the general areas or those that may even be a prerequisite skill. A prerequisite skill is something a student would need before they are able to learn responsible decision making or social awareness. For example, if we are teaching self awareness skills, for some students we might focus on the prerequisite skill of resilience, like perseverance or flexibility to shift from one task to another.
I have kids with social disability related needs. What about those?
Well, in social awareness, we might teach skills like joint attention or context reading. For relationship skills, we might teach and support the skill of asking for help, or teach a student to learn to shift from thinking about their own ideas to think about someone else's ideas. It even supports us in addressing responsible decision making, might involve skills like making a choice or creating your own goals and schedules. Finally, in self management, we might teach noticing one's own body signals or identifying and using coping strategies. And there are many more skills for IEP teams to consider.
I bet I can find some of the skills to teach in the social emotional learning competencies that you were just talking about. I might need to look into those for ideas on what to teach, but wait a minute. What about the students with IEPs that we need to go deeper or explore different paths for? Where would I find those skills?
The SEL competencies would be a great place to start for skills. Another resource we have in Wisconsin to help us take a deeper dive is the Supporting Neurodiverse Students Professional Learning System, or the SNS. On the SNS website, you will find information on skills like joint attention, noticing one's own body signals, building skills of asking for help, perseverance, and making a choice. These would be examples of the prerequisite skills to the SEL competencies.
Wow, I didn't know we had so many resources that I could go to. I've got my go tos for teaching, reading, and math, and now I am so glad there is something out there to help me with the other parts of learning.
I'm glad I could help. Now that we know how to get information about what we need to teach, let's move on to how we do it. A great resource about explicit instruction comes from the Council for Exceptional Children's High Leverage Practices. This can help us understand how to actually teach the skills.
So you're saying I can teach skills like coping or flexibility the same way that I teach math or reading?
Yes, we can use explicit instruction of teaching, modeling, practicing, and then moving toward independence for all of those SEL skills. That's the framework of I do, we do, you do.
So how would I go about doing that?
By following the basic components of explicit instruction. You're already doing this. Let's check out a DPI resource, the Gradual Release of Responsibility Framework. In the same way we teach English language arts, we can teach social and emotional learning skills. It is the same process of I do, we do, you do. So let's break this down. See the two triangles? One's the teacher, one's the student, and their size shows who is in the driver's seat. In I do and we do, the teacher is driving, leading with clear lessons while the student rides along. In you do, the student takes the wheel. Their triangle grows, and they're leading in the learning experience and building independence. The teacher's still there, just in the passenger seat, ready to support if needed.
So I hear you saying it starts with me leading the learning, but my goal is that the student gradually takes the lead and uses the skill?
Yes, when it comes to social skills or emotional skills, we want to start with teaching and modeling. We have our lessons that create the teaching moments, and we strategically plan how we will also model what skill we want to see the student using. When you model the skill, you have an opportunity for the brain to code that skill. When a skill grows, the output, which we call behavior, changes. If you want to see a certain behavior, then provide a focus lesson and model that behavior. This is the I do part of the explicit instruction. We have to take the time to explain the social or emotional concept so that the student has the chance to layer it in their brain.
So, would that look like when I am reading a passage during our literacy time, verbally noting to the class how a character is regulating, and then possibly stopping, explicitly describing what the character is doing, and modeling that action myself? Like taking a deep breath?
That's a great start. That sounds like you're purposefully adding in explicit instruction and modeling of a self-management skill into your lessons. It is a great strategy to intentionally pull them out as examples in your typical lesson material.
I'm confused. I don't need a separate curriculum for this?
Not necessarily. As much as we can, we use what we already have. You can use curriculum that specifically addresses social or emotional skills, but you don't have to limit yourself to that.
Okay. So, what do I do?
During this stage, you want to strategically teach to help with student understanding, anticipate common misconceptions, and engage students in active learning. In your example of building self-management skills, you may have to teach lessons first on how to notice signals in the student's own body and put words into feeling. This could look like time spent having the students engage in a mini lesson that could also serve as a movement break. Like clapping their hands together for 10 seconds, having the students share out how their hands feel and modeling different words that expand on their descriptions of the sensations they're feeling. Then ask them to do something to make their hands feel better. Finally, ask them if what they did worked. In this quick activity, you explicitly taught, modeled, and supported a layering of learning self-management skills. And as a bonus, it helped break up some of the academic learning. It provided a brain break so you can maintain student attention.
I get what you're saying. What's next?
Start practicing. This is the we do part. It is really important to remember this is the time to help support student learning and making sure that they can fail with safety. We all learn through our mistakes, and when students get to practice and problem solve through an unexpected result, a mistake, they learn more. But this has to be done in a supportive environment, in a safe way. Relationships matter. Having a connection to students is essential in learning.
That I can handle. I am constantly reflecting on my relationships with kids and how I react to them. I know that a feeling of belonging and a positive, supportive relationship with educators is a foundational piece to students' learning.
As educators, we need to proactively think about our prompting levels, specific praise, and correction methods in order to allow students to fail with safety. We never want a mistake to result in a student feeling like they did something bad or don't belong, especially since adults often see unmet skills in social or emotional areas as behavior that is challenging to us. If we start seeing behavior output as an opportunity to support a student in learning a new skill or supporting a student through a practice moment, we will start reacting differently. Having relationship and support come first before we correct or redirect a mismatching behavior.
So, in our example of building self management skills during the I do phase, I worked on building regulation through modeling in the book I was reading. Would the we do step look like me engaging students in practice coping mechanisms? I could say, let's try to breathe like the character in the book did when they were upset. Or I could set up different mindfulness activities and tie it back to how that supports self management.
Yes. Another way to think of it is this way. In teaching phonics, do you have strategies planned out or differentiated ways you approach teaching those phonics skills to better meet the needs of every student? What you described is the same thing. It's a plan to support the practice of a new or emerging skill. We want to be at the ready to support the skill, but allow students to start navigating the skills on their own. In your example of self management, at this stage, we also might engage in a self reflection strategy to help support the movement to independence. The you do step is all about the students on their path to independence. When students are exposed to the information in various ways, seeing non examples and examples, they learn even more. Our goal is for the student to not need us anymore and be able to use the information across settings and situations. One way we support at this stage is providing specific positive feedback when we see the skill we have been teaching.
So I will know it is working when I see a student take a pause and breathe before a tough math problem, or seek out help when they get stuck. I know we will have our ups and downs, and sometimes the students will be able to demonstrate the skill sometimes, but may not be able to do it 100%. But that's human. I know we have space and grace because we all have good days and bad days. I always strive to make sure the student can fail with safety.
Of course, a lot of these skills do not appear overnight. All learning takes time. We need to take data to monitor growth of these skills. We look for and celebrate the little wins because this stuff is hard. When we think about the skill set you have been teaching, self management, even adults struggle with many of these skills at times, and your students are just starting their journey. So try to have patience and remember we teach, reteach, and support through the process of learning not only for ABC 1, 2, 3, but social and emotional skills too.
You changed my mind. Oh, wait, I am a mind. You changed me.
I'm eager to see the direction you take next.